Welcome to Growth and Green Tea, the podcast that explores the stories of individuals who have overcome obstacles and trials in their lives. I am your host, Andrea Beem, and each week I'll be joined by a special guest who will share their personal journey of growth and resilience. From facing difficult challenges to experiencing personal growth, these guests will share their unique stories and insights. And through their experiences, my aim is to empower and encourage our listeners, providing them with a blueprint for dealing with their own obstacles. So grab a cup of green tea and join us as we dive into the inspiring stories of individuals who have turned their struggles into opportunities. Welcome to Growth and Green Tea. All right. Today we are here on the Growth and Green Tea podcast. I have an amazing guest that we're going to be talking to today. And Matt, I just got to meet you not that long ago, really. I mean, within a year ago. Met you for the first time. Good friend introduced us, and that's kind of where we started talking. And then realizing Matt's story, realized he needed to be on this podcast. So you guys are in for a treat. And Matt, I want to introduce you to everybody, and just, I want to just start off by just tell us, who you are, and let's just jump right in. Like, I want to jump right into just tell me how you grew up, tell me what your family life was like, and let's start there.
Yeah. So, just at the, as we have these conversations, right? We start at the now and then the beginning, right? So currently live in Las Vegas, married, wife, 11 years, 12 years, 2010. So what year are we in?
Congrats. That's awesome.
Yeah. So 2010 to 2023. So 13 years, almost 13 years. We just moved to Las Vegas. That's part of the story. And we have two amazing fur kids named Salt and Pretzel, and are in the current process of building out our backyard and landscaping here in Las Vegas. So that's all the dessert. Now let's go back to the veggies, right?
I love it.
So I grew up like as boring as boring could be. I mean, I was Southern Indiana. I was a farm kid. I grew up on a farm, and I had allergies. I had asthma. And I lived in the middle of a hay farm. So
worst place that you could be.
if you could imagine how my childhood was, the only thing I could do was eat. And because I had asthma, I couldn't exercise. So I got fat really quickly. I was just a big chubby kid, right? I was just that kid. Growing up, my parents got divorced in 2000 or when I was in third grade. So we had a fractured home at that point. Still love my dad, still love my mom, but I didn't know what I didn't know, right? Yeah. Really didn't even know what was happening. And so I think this is a critical part of the story, is I went, and I think as most young boys do, hey, I'm going to go be on dad's team. And my sister went to go be on mom's team. We still lived with mom, but it was like I couldn't wait until 6 o'clock Fridays when my dad picked us up, right? Yeah.
It sucks that it's like that. It does feel like that. My parents divorced too, and I was 5, but it does kind of feel like you're picking a team, or you're even, you don't want it to feel that way, but it just kind of naturally sometimes does. So.
Well, and again, the first years of any divorce are probably, there's way more conflict. Sure. As we grew up and grew older, friends, the friendship kind of came back. Yeah. However, but I idolized my dad.
Yeah.
Right. I just was like, hey, this is what we do. Right. And I saw him do all of the things. Right. I learned how to play golf. When I was young, I learned how to play learned how to play golf on the farm, all of that stuff. And so as I was progressing through my life, I was just started picking up the small little things that my dad was dropping. Right. Good and bad. Mm-hmm. I went to places that I shouldn't have gone to when I was 16, and you needed to be 21 to enter. Right. We'll leave it at that. We'll keep it PG rated. And I was just, I was 16, right? I was with the guys. I mean, my hangout on Friday nights was not with my high school friends. It was with my dad and his other farm buddies sitting around a bonfire, breaking whiskey bottles and smoking cigarettes. Like that was my child. That was my adult life. That was how I was exposed to like being an adult,
It's
right?
like a scene out of the Yellowstone TV series.
100%, right? 100%. And so, as I went into college, I did everything my dad did. And as I look back now, all of the good and the bad, right? He was the incredible teacher. I now coach real estate agents, right? 30 years later. Um, but I did all the things that he did, right? I ate too much, I drank too much, I smoked cigarettes, like I did things I just probably shouldn't have done. But I did those in small doses. And because I saw him sign for the cheeseburger at the golf course, I saw him sign for this. I saw him hand $100 bills to guys at the Colts games for either tickets or a book or whatever. If you won the bet, then I saw all of that. I didn't know what was going on, but I saw it, right?
Sure.
And then so when I went to college, I did what most people do is like I just signed for it, right? And that was the start of this debt accumulation that accumulated into this monster that a lot of people see, right? Because of how it was told and how it was documented on the internet and YouTube and all that stuff. So as I go through college and high school or a college, and I get into the real world, like I already have like a credit card and student loan debt before I even get a job.
Yeah.
Right. And so as like I didn't know any different. And so I'm making 25 grand living in Northern Virginia, which is the most expensive county on the planet to live in, maybe outside of like LA and New York, right? I'm making 25 grand and I'm hanging around guys that make $250,000, $500,000, million, tens of millions of dollars, because this is 1998, 99, 2000, like .com. Everybody's making money. Right. This is right before 9/11 and this .com bubble and all of that stuff. So I'm hanging out with guys that are 10 to 20 years older than me, that all I see is them playing golf, having fun. And I'm like, I want that.
Yeah.
And so
you see that surface.
So as an addict, right, at the core, I'm an addict. And when you go and you make money, you just money just magnifies who you are. Mm-hmm. And so, I would be like, hey, let's go play, let's go gamble, let's go do this, and let's go to the bar afterwards. And, I'll buy or they'll buy or whatever. And so that just started this domino effect in the wrong direction of when I leave that industry and I start making more money and I start drinking more because I have more stress, and then I start gambling because I need more money. And poor Malinda is on this journey the whole way, knowing about a third of it. She probably knows more than I give her credit for. But it all catapults and all accumulates to, we get married in 2010. Yeah. I remember being too heavy. I lost some weight to get married, and I had fluctuated. I mean, I might hold the record for losing the most 20 pounds and gaining the most 30 in the history of weight loss. Like I had a yo-yo diet, so I had a yo-yo lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's an easy way to put it. I had a yo-yo diet, so which led to a yo-yo lifestyle. Right. Yeah. And it can be the opposite. It can go the other way. Right. And so as we got married, and I remember on our honeymoon wanting to go do a zip line excursion. I mean, Malinda has the adventure gene in her body. I was too big. I weighed like 10 pounds too heavy. And so we went and we had to do a different excursion. And so like I remember that is seared in my head. That's one of those things I'm like, I never want to put ourselves in that type of position again. And so we just kept living life like normal people do. And we were making money. We were just trying to figure it out as a young married couple, but buying things on payments buying things on credit because we could afford the payment. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know any of this was happening, except I could see myself getting bigger. I was just gaining weight, and it was all the stress. I was drinking more. In 2012, around this time, the spring season is so important to me because so many impactful things happened between like February and May. And it's just in my life, right? In those different years. And so in March of 2012, I got on the scale and I weighed 293 pounds. We were in counseling. I was wearing size 42 pants, golf pants, not like jeans that are tight, like full size, like the legs were like this big. If you're watching it, like they are huge, right? These Adidas golf pants, because they were, I mean, I was wearing Adidas golf pants, size 42, and Tommy Bahama XX. And I was like, the most comfortable clothes on the planet, and I couldn't get comfortable sitting on a chair, or on a couch.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a trigger that you know that something is broken.
Yeah.
I'm on one side of the couch, Malinda's on the other. She's crying. I'm blaming her. And my counselor asked me a very specific question in March of 2012. He said, Matt, do you have a drinking problem? And I said, I don't know if I have a drinking problem. And he said, well, can you go 90 days without a drink? And I said, I probably can, but she'll still give me blah, blah, blah. Right. There'll still be something wrong. Right. And that was the brokenness that I had. Right. I didn't look at myself and say, hey, dude, you're the problem. It was always somebody else. And I had to react. So that was a broken part of my mindset. And so I didn't want to stop drinking, Andrea. I didn't want to stop smoking. I didn't want to stop gambling, but I knew I had to lose weight because I'd done it in the past. And I could change like that.
Isn't it interesting when we see, I feel like they talk about when somebody that has a near-death experience, like they see their life flash before their eyes or something like that. And I think in scenarios like this, where we see the things that are wrong, like we know they're wrong. We see the things that should be getting fixed. We see the things that should be getting addressed. And yet I don't know if it's a mixture of just not knowing what to do to fix it, or not being willing to recognize it, or to the level that it needs to be recognized, right? Maybe we recognize it a little bit, but we don't really want to acknowledge just how far it's gone, right? And we get stuck in this place of seeing it or knowing it and just almost being, I don't know, frozen, maybe. Like we don't know how or what or who, and we don't want to give up the Band-Aids, because all these things are Band-Aids. You Band-Aid one thing, which causes another thing, which Band-Aids that, which causes another thing, right? And it's just this domino.
Yeah, in the wrong direction, right?
In the wrong direction.
And so a lot of people, including myself, got to the place that I got to, and we'll use the acronym FOMO, right? Fear of missing out, right? I didn't want to miss out on this. I didn't want to miss out on the car. I didn't want to miss out on the timeshare. I didn't want to miss out on the thing to use the credit card. However, how you unpack all of that is through FOFO, fear of finding out. Finding out the truth. I have to give credit where credit's due. I don't remember which one it was, but it was either Fred or Kevin in Cabo said that. I can't remember, so we're going to give both of them credit. And so the fear of finding out, and just the next question that the counselor asked me, he said, Matt, or he didn't ask me, he made a statement. He goes, young man, we don't know each other that well. However, I do know people like you. And I've known them and I still know them. And you have 12 months. You're going to be dead, divorced, in jail, or broke in 12 months if you do not change. And that was my moment that I was like, okay, this is a complete stranger. And I'm not going to say, what the hell does he know? He doesn't know me. He does this for a living. And he has seen this book and read this book 1,000 times. So I didn't want to stop anything, but I could stop losing weight. So I started figuring out how to lose some weight. I'd done it in the past. So I got a buddy. We talked about it on social media. And then some things started happening. I started losing weight. I started seeing the number go down, which it made it easier to not drink. Except, Andrea, when you're on a weight loss journey and your favorite beverage is Coors Light and like Jaeger, Tawaka, and Grand Marnier, which are extreme heavy caloric adult beverages, your next best option is go straight to vodka, which I did extremely well over the course of 3 weeks. And I lost weight, but my God, I was a mess. Because you can drink vodka, not that I drink it like a lot during the day, but you can just drink it and it doesn't taste like anything because of all the sweeteners that you can put around it. And it's just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is me talking in 2012, not 2023, right?
Yeah.
So I realized that I had it. That's when I realized I had an alcohol problem. I had a drinking problem. And so I just I was tired of just pissing away the days of sobriety. I would show up and it would be like day 2, and then it would be like day 3, and then I would drink, and then I would come back in and it'd be like day 1. He was like, dude, why can't you do this? Because I was unwilling to go into any programs, AA or anything like that. And so I finally had my rock bottom moment when I said, I'm done. I'm just tired of just throwing away the days of sobriety. Right. I had a really bad gambling day. I drank, and then I had a rock bottom moment with Malinda. And I saw the life just come out of her, and I was like, I'm done. I'm done drinking. And I haven't drank since. Next month will be 11 years.
Wow.
And the same thing happened with gambling, and the same thing happened with cigarettes. And as I just kept progressing down the line of losing weight, and I call it right-hand turns, right? If you're at a fork in the road, I just kept making right-hand turns. Hey, I'm going to lose weight. Am I going to drink this or drink this? Right? This helps me. I'm going to eat this or eat this. I'm going to eat this.
Were you doing this all at once? So when this trigger happened for you and you made that decision in that moment that you can't keep down that path, did you tackle all those things at once, or was it sequential?
Well, a lot of it, it happened very quickly. So it was at different times, but it happened very quick.
Okay.
I lost 15, 20 pounds, and then I stopped drinking. And then I was sober for, I don't know, 2 weeks, and I stopped gambling.
Okay. So sequential, but very close together.
Very quickly. You talk about how long does it take to build a habit, right? It can take anywhere between 14 and 264 days, and the average is around 66. I broke 3 habits very quickly because I started seeing results, and I was getting energy, and I was going down. The snowball was moving very quickly. That's me. Sometimes it takes people a year to look at their bank account every day.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Whatever. Right? It takes, case in point, it took me a year. After all of that, it took me a year to stop smoking cigarettes. Crazy.
It's the gradually.
It's the thing that I will never drink again. And I will probably, even though I live in Las Vegas now, I probably won't ever gamble again. Maybe the occasional fantasy, this and that. And I will never smoke a cigarette again. Right? But it's amazing now thinking about it took you that long to stop smoking a cigarette. This was 12 years ago, right? Where you could walk into any bar anywhere in the country other than maybe New York City, and you could smoke cigarettes. And so people today thinking about that, they're like, we've gone a decade where you can't smoke anywhere other than in a casino. Right? So all of that happened, and then we had our moment, which was when we realized that we had to take out our second 401k loan to make it the next 90 days, or else we weren't going to make it. And that was in the spring of 2014.
And that's after already battling the weight loss, the drinking, the gambling. That's after already battling all that. Now you're staring down this
$551,000 of debt.
What did that feel like when you realized that, when you had that moment, that stark reality? What was the feeling that was going through your mind at that moment?
Hang on, let me see if it's there. It's not there. It'll take too long to get. I remember my hands shaking writing down the numbers. Right? I remember writing down all of the debts we had. Like I knew the ones that we had, right? The mortgage, the car, the this, and then you start like, we owe the timeshare this, we owe this, we owe this, we owe this, I owe this person. Like my hand started shaking when I start adding it up. I'm like, hold on, that can't be right. Right. And I start adding it again. I'm like, shit, the number's higher. You're right. It wasn't right. It's higher. And then I started adding up the payments. And then we realized we were spending about $4,000 more a month than we were making.
Oh my goodness.
And we were making 10 grand. So if you're making $50,000 a month and you're spending $4,000 more, like clean up what you're eating and you can fix that problem.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least you can get on the right side of it. We were spending 40-50% more than we were making in a relationship to in a ratio to our income. And so like that is a moment that I'll never forget. Like, how do we do this? And so we went to the first thing that I went to was a buddy of mine. His name is Jim Pacherky. He had given me a book 3 months earlier because that's what good Christians do. They give you the tools before you know that you need them. And he said, here, read this book called The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. And it sat on my shelf that I put probably drinks and everything else on. At some point, it probably held an ashtray. And and I was like, I'm going to go read this book. And I just dove into it. And then that led us to Financial Peace University. And the thing that Malinda and I said was like, hey, we need to figure out a budget. And when I went to our very first Financial Peace University class, I recommend every single person listening to this, they go through Financial Peace University at least once in their life. Mm-hmm. Regardless of who you are, how much money you make, where your net worth is. It could be $20 million, go through FPU again. And I went through that. And the first lesson, Dave talks about, the baby steps and that first $1,000.
Yep.
And I'm like, I have $3,000. I was like, saving $1,000 seems like such a big thing. However, I'm like, I can just do that right now. And then I started equating it to my weight loss journey. And I was like, we have all this mountain of debt and I had 100 pounds to lose. Did I try to lose 100 pounds or did I try to lose 10? And I tried to lose 10 pounds 10 times. And that's the only way that you can unpack this stuff is losing 10 pounds 10 times, right? Whether you have a bunch of debt or you want to start investing a bunch of money or whatever it is, like you just have to start eating the elephant one bite at a time.
Yeah. That is such an important factor that you just said, because I think so many people think they're going to get out of it they're going to get out of it a different way than they got into it, right? They get into it slowly. It happens over time, right? These things you don't just go to bed one night, wake up the next morning and you're $500,000 in debt or you're, hundreds of pounds overweight. It doesn't happen in one night. It happens over weeks and months and years. And so when people start thinking about how am I going to get out of this, I think have this false expectation that they're somehow going to get out of it overnight. And we're such an instant gratification society that it's just the natural thing that as humans we go to is to have it happen this quickly. And I think when you brought up too the Financial Peace University, one of the things he does really well with that is he gives you a structure. So many of us do not have a structure for our financials. It's not something that was taught to us in high school, or it was not something that was taught to us by parents. And so many people are just trying to figure it out on their own with no guidance. And he creates a structure within that, but it's those baby steps you've got to do. I love that you said, I've got to lose 10 pounds 10 times. It's not 100 pounds. It's let's just go for the 10 first. Let's just get there first so we can celebrate a win, right? Like
1 pound a week.
Huge.
If you just focus on losing 1 pound a week, you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then you identify the habit or everyone listening to this that needs to lose weight, just start by walking 8,000 steps a day. It'll take you a little over an hour.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to do all you don't even have to do it all at once.
Mm-hmm.
20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes. There's your 8,000 steps.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you're like Malinda, it might be a little bit more because your stride's not as long. But right. But to get those steps, it's not a mile, it's not a time, it's just the steps. So everybody has the same target.
Yeah.
And then you get to 10, and then you get to 12. And then, like, I mean, that can be your cardio forever.
Mm-hmm.
There's like zero impact, right? Everybody here, unless they have a disability, can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if you have a disability, we'll find something else. Right. And everybody here can track their bank account, and everybody here can write down their monthly expenses. And everybody here can plan. Everybody listening to this knows how much money they're going to make in the next 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
You don't, if you're a real estate agent listening to this, you don't know how much you're going to make in July.
Yeah.
But you know how much you're going to make in May. Start there.
Yeah.
Right. And so, fast forward, we got into Financial Peace University. And as you can tell, when I grab a hold of something, I go, right? There is no brake, it's all gas. And thank goodness, because we gained some momentum. And then I got the call that my dad died. 3 months into our new journey, less than 3 months, I got the call that my dad died of a heart attack. I wasn't there. I was in New York City. Millions of people, and time stood still in Times Square. And I use that as a fuel because of the experience that I had from his death to the disorganization of finances and the disorganization of paperwork. And nobody knew where anything was. They owned this farm, and it was chaos for 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
And so I use that as like, I'm never going through this again. And that just really fueled our fire to start really paying off debt quickly, making more money, doing everything on the planet to make money. And I think we cash flowed at least $100 or $125,000 that first year of debt that we either paid off or eliminated. We practiced sacrifice, delay gratification, saying no way before saying yes. Like, we would say no 3 times before we would say yes. My wife and I went radical. We drove a car. We had, husband and wife driving one car in Northern Virginia just is unheard of. And our goal was to do it for 90 days, and we did it for 8 years.
So go back and unpack something for a minute for me, because I think something that happens quite often when someone makes a decision to make changes in their life in one way, shape, or form, they commit to something, and then, like you said, you were 3 months into this journey, and then you get a 2x4 up the backside of the head, right? Mm-hmm. Like, something just comes into your life that can totally derail potentially the progress that you guys had started to make. And insert any other story in here, right? Like, maybe I'm making a commitment to just one of those things.
Yeah.
I'll just use a tiny example.
8,000 steps a day.
8,000 steps a day, right? Like, maybe you're just committing to that, and then a family emergency happens, right? And all of a sudden you're in a hospital, and how are you going to do the 8,000 steps a day, right? Inevitably, things are going to get thrown in your path. I think, I wish I had the poem in front of me because I don't have it memorized. But there's a poem that really talks about, once you make a decision that basically, if you really, really make that decision, that basically nothing is going to get in your way. Like, mountains will move if you've made that decision.
Yeah.
In even ways that you couldn't even imagine, right? Things will come together for you, things will happen for you. But at the same time, and I think people feel like maybe that's not going to happen to them, that they're not going to get the roadblock. They're not going to get, it's almost like it's like another test, right? Like, how bad do you really want to make that change? Because we're going to test you again, and I'm not saying it happens to everybody, but I think it's an important part of your story that you're only 3 months into this journey when you had the potential to really derail.
It could have gone so sideways.
Mm-hmm.
Like it could have gone so sideways.
How did it not for you?
Um, I think I'd had enough sobriety under my belt. Well, let me back up. The reason why it didn't was because back in 2012, I started promoting a company and a weight loss company called Visalis and the Body by Vi 90-day challenge. Um, for all of you people that are on social media and you're talking about your weight loss program, we were the OG. We were the OG that made weight loss fun, cool, sexy, and social back in 2010, 11, and 12. And I was part of that community. I was every 90 days we set a new target, a new health and fitness target, and I really leaned hard into them, like the some of the leadership and the friends that I had built, right, if a part of my team and my organization. So one, I had that. And I had other people looking up to me, right? I mean, I had my grandparents were still alive, right? Their son had just passed away, and I didn't want to let them down, right? I didn't want to go back and start drinking. Um, I think that helped also my grandfather stop drinking, right? That moment of my dad passing away, later that year, he decided to not drink anymore. At 80, right?
Wow.
I mean, so like I think just not disappointing and letting other people down, not even myself, but primarily my wife and others. Um, and I remember like a month in, and I didn't do anything for a month, right? I just, you get that 2x4, like you said, it's like it's time stands still. But we picked it right back up, right? We just said, hey, this is the bump. We need to get back on track because what would my dad expect us to do? He wouldn't expect us to quit and start drinking and smoking cigarettes again or whatever, right? So we just kept going. And through that journey, 14, 15, 16, we figured out how to live on as little as money as possible so we could pay off this debt. Again, we were living in Reston, Virginia, and Ashburn, Virginia, expensive places where people they buy things to impress their neighbors. 100%. Right?
Keeping up with the Joneses.
I mean, you keep up. There was an article and they called the Joneses something else. It was funny. I can't remember what the article said, but I got a kick out of it. It obviously lit some people up, but I got a charge out of it because they called they used to call Ashburn Cashburn.
Oh.
And so there was a name, I can't remember what it was, but it was like the Joneses, right? So anyway, at the end of the day, we just kept moving at our pace. We just made a decision that this was our race, no one else's. And then in 2014, at the end of 15, I made the decision to accept Jesus, and like the rest of that's history. Right. And I got led to Jesus and back into church through Financial Peace University. Right. Because I was like, Dave talks about giving, and I'm like, cool. I go through all of this stuff and like giving is the last thing. And I'm like, I got 14 cents left. I'm literally emptying it out in my pockets. And I got a paper clip, a pen, and a couple of nickels. But I paid off debt. And, Andrea, when I turned that upside down and we started giving first and then paying off debt, it was the gasoline to the fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was gasoline to the fire.
Totally different mentality. It is a mental shift.
I mean, gang, if you can't figure out how to live on 90%, you've got way bigger problems than giving 10% to your church.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to figure out a different way, right? And so as we were going through that, one of the things that uncovered was I needed to go make more money. Like we couldn't live like this forever. And there was no reason to. I mean, I had a huge skill set of sales and coaching and consulting. And I mean, there was so much potential, right? It's one of the reasons why I chose the sponsor I did at EXP, because he believed in me and challenged me as much as he did, because I was playing so far below where he could see. And so I started selling real estate, got my license, and my first commission check. This is when it all changed. Was sitting in the Keller Williams Market Center, Reston, Virginia. I'm having lunch. I get a notice on my phone that my check, or that the closing was set, and like, this is how much your check's going to be, right? And I look at it, and I was like, $8,000. I think it was like 8,000. And so I was like, that's so cool. I'm going to make $8,000. And I get to do this, this, and this. I'm talking, I don't remember who was in the room. I remember one person that's in the room. Rob Chavez was in the room. And Rob and I walked people through. I was like, hey, this is what I'm going to do with the money. What would you do with it? Because I don't know. I mean, I've never sold a house before. And I told them what I was going to do, and they told me what they were going to do. And they were like, we're going to pay last year's taxes. We're going to go pay this car note. And I mean, I'm debt free at this point, right? And I'm like, well, I'm going to pay $4,000 to myself. I'm going to save $2,000 for the government. I'm going to take $2,000 and hire a coach. And they're like, they looked at me, Andrea, like I had 12 heads and I was speaking French. And I'm like, if I do this, I looked at Rob, and Rob's an investor. He's a great friend of mine. And I looked at Rob and I was like, dude, I'm about ready to get rich. And so he was one of the catalysts over the next 2 years to just keep encouraging me to have these conversations with real estate agents, because I knew what to do with the money and they didn't. But they were always thirsty for that information, because as we're learning based as real estate agents and entrepreneurs. And it was that moment I made the decision that, hey, real estate is just a vehicle for me to go make money so I can create enough space to have conversations with real estate agents to help them with their money and to get out of debt, to avoid the pain, get out of the pain that I was in, to help them experience the joy that I was having.
Yeah.
And, 4 years ago I started, I didn't have a coaching client 4 years ago. I did not have a coaching client 4 years ago. And today, I mean, my calendar's filled until June 15th. Right. So like, it's just, and now we've built this gorgeous house in Las Vegas. We've done everything that we wanted to do in the last 4 years of save and save and save and invest and invest and invest. And now we were able to move all the way across the country from 1,000-square-foot apartment to a gorgeous home here in the Las Vegas Valley.
So you had something I was picking up on as you've talked, is you had a couple of people in your life that really threw you a life preserver. And I think sometimes they're small, they're little life preservers. And in the moment, it can be difficult to recognize what they are. But you mentioned several places along the lines where those little preservers were thrown out, right? Whether it was a counselor being willing to ask you a tough question, or it was a friend being willing to honestly say something that, I mean, you could have just punched him, right? Like you could have just been like, seriously, dude, like you're going to say that to me? Like, you don't even know me. And, just your wife, you mentioned your wife, having that, and the person that handed you the Financial Peace University, like, we never recognize when one little action that we do, like handing a book to someone, is going to be one of those little life preservers, right?
Yeah. I mean, between, Malinda and Jim Pacherki and Rob Chavez and Clayton Getz and Josh Rogers, Matt Dyra, like, these guys are just anchors, right?
Yeah.
They're just, and, we haven't been friends forever. It's like a very small window. Now, that was years ago, and now over time it feels like forever, right? And it's just really cool having people in your world like that.
So talk to me a little bit about, I know that with some of our listeners, I mean, the huge point of this podcast is for people to recognize all the different trials that other people have, mm-hmm. and then also maybe be able to pull a tool or two away, right? So obviously you had the life preserver people in your life. You had people that believed in you when you didn't, right? I think we all have that. You hear of addicts whose families are just still 15 years later, 20 years later, however long, they are, trying desperately to help their loved one, right? Because they know what they can be. They know what their potential is. What would you say, looking back at your story, what would you say is a tool or two that you would pull out that you think, in hindsight being 2020, is something that would help someone else?
So there's 3 steps to any transformation.
Okay.
The first step is always going to be the hardest, is being honest. And the step is awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And having the guts to write down what's real and honest and raw in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And write it all down. Right? I weigh this much. I drink this much. I'm addicted to this. I watch this. Right? I
have this much debt.
I have this much debt. I have this much money. I've been in, and be real. Like, I mean, a lot of the listeners are probably going to be agents, right? I've been in real estate 15 years and my net worth is this. Mm-hmm. That will punch a lot of people in the gut. Mm-hmm. Right? I've sold 400 houses and I haven't bought any. Mm-hmm. It's just, and then understand that those are just the facts. The facts are truth, and the truth will set you free. That's it. There's no blame. There's no shame. There's no guilt. There is zero that we can do about anything that's happened in the last 25 years. Nothing we can do about it. Mm-hmm. So now you're faced with this reality where I think a lot of people are probably going to be too harsh on them. So let's also add the dessert in there. I have a loving wife. I have this. I have these kids. I have, this home. I wake up with a roof over my head. Like, if you're listening to this, I have energy. I have internet. I have like all of these things, right? And that's one of the people that is, potentially a pillar in my life, is helping me with gratitude. Right? Because it's so easy for us to get in that moment of awareness to just write all the trash down, right? Mm-hmm. All the things that are going to make us feel bad, because mm-hmm. it's way easier to go bad than good.
Yeah.
But then force ourselves to be grateful for the progress that we're making. And then write down all the good, right? So now you got a sheet or two of paper of like all the facts in life today. Now we have to make a decision. But you can make a decision like that. I have this much debt. I'm not ever using a credit card again. Done. Decision made. Right? I watch too much TV. Done. Call whatever streaming service and cancel it. Take the TV off the wall and put it in the closet for 90 days. You can make that decision like that. And then the next thing is intentionality. Mm-hmm. Do the thing, track the thing before you actually do it. It's the number one habit that I have everyone go through when they start working with me, is planning your money before you even earn it. And then plan it before you spend it. And then after it comes in, adjust the actual amount, figure out where it needs to be changed on the spending, and then track every dollar that you spend until your next income comes in.
Mm-hmm. So be honest and aware.
Yep. Make
the decision and have intentionality.
Yep.
I love that.
You can create any transformation you want, physically, financially, spiritually, relationally, period. Business. Awareness will do 50% of the heavy lifting.
So let me ask you another question. And I wasn't going to ask this, but I want to ask this because I think it's probably a problem for a lot of people. Did you feel like in your process, anywhere in this process, that shame was a problem for you? Like, was that a mental block for you?
Still is.
Mm-hmm. How do you overcome the shame part of it? Because, I was having a conversation with my son the other day about some projects that I'm doing, and I was having this imposter syndrome feeling, right? And I said, well, what authorizes me to go speak on this, or what authorizes me to go do these things? And our pastor at our church overcame was an alcoholic, overcame the addiction to that, and is a pastor now, right? Like overcame some pretty big hurdles in his life, and is an amazing pastor. And I've heard his story a couple of times, and it always just is phenomenal to me. And my son sits there and he goes, well, what experience makes Kyle a great pastor? Like, it's not what you think it would be. It wasn't because he went to seminary school. It wasn't because he was a good Christian, right? It wasn't because he, did all the right things, right? It wasn't because he did all the right things that led him to being this great pastor. No, what makes him a great pastor is actually the exact past that we feel shame about is what makes him amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's same for you. Your past is what makes you an amazing coach. And it was a real aha for me. I mean, my son is 20 years old, and he's just sitting there looking at me. He's like, well, I don't understand. He was like, do you think Pastor Kyle had experience when he did that? And I kind of walked out of the room going, wow, okay. Like, you just kind of handed that to me on like slap across the face, right? Like, you're right. You're right. So how do you deal with it? Because I'm curious to answer a lot of my guests this question. How do you battle back? How do you battle back the shame?
Action.
Action. I love it. Okay,
Just
tell
go
me
do the
more.
work. Just go do the work. I mean, action breeds clarity. And so when you have that moment of like, I had it last fall when I was in a mastermind. We talked about this off camera, and I knew I wanted to hire I needed a different person in my life to take me to the next place. I was at her event, and coming out during the event, she's like, tell me what you do. So I told her what I do. She's like, what result do you help people get? So I showed her the result, and I showed her how much I was charging. She was like, change that number. And I'm like, I can't change that number. And she was like, then leave. Because if you don't change that number, then you're not going to get to what you said you wanted to do. So just leave. And so I was like, okay, what if we do this? And like I was building a retreat, right? Because I had built one-on-one after one-on-one after one-on-one after one-on-one, and I had 40 one-on-one calls when I started. Like, it was, my calendar was filled, and I was attached to this camera. So now I have to figure out, how am I going to give more impact to more people, make more revenue in less time on camera, right? Dave Ramsey does it.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't I do it? Right. So, and all the people that you see that you want to be have done it. Right. And so I was like, okay, I'll just build an event, and I'll charge this amount of money to have people come to learn the thing that they learn over 12 months. We're going to learn it in 3 days. And they pay the same amount of money, but they get the result faster.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had 12 people show up in Las Vegas in January of this spring, and they got the result in 3 days, and here we go.
It's interesting how just one perspective shift can completely change a path.
Yeah. And so now when it comes to people working with me, it's like, this is what now I'm building out, or have built out a step. Like, this is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3, regardless of who you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's allowing me to get my time back, and they're allowed to go get the result at the pace they want, not the pace that I want.
Mm-hmm.
So I've created a place for people to fall in where they fit it.
Did you change anything about your life throughout this process in terms of who you were hanging around and the places you were going? What were some of the external factors that you maybe adjusted?
Yeah, definitely the who's, right? The book Who Not How is so powerful in so many ways. But I mean, it takes a lot to get into my world now. I mean, like, a lot. to the point where like I need to be on the search for something to bring people in, right? Or they need to be on the search, and there's a lot of overlap, and we can pull one thread through a lot of eye holes to get the result that both of us are looking for, right? Whether it's business, or whether it's friendship, or whether it's mentorship, or whether it's just, hey, a golf buddy here in Vegas, right? There has to be a lot of commonality and a lot of overlapping or hey, you know what? I can take this person and lead them to the result they want, and they don't have to exchange time for money, right? It can just be, it doesn't always have to be a dollar amount. However, it takes a lot to get into my inner circle. I write down about 10 to 15 names a day, and it takes a lot to be one of those 10 to 15 names.
It's a bunker, right? You essentially built a bunker.
Yeah. I mean, it's 12 of them are pretty consistent. Right. I got a really good starting 12. And then there's some that come and go in the other 3, right? And that's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just, in that moment I thought of them, right? But but it takes a lot, right? And it even takes more to get into Malinda's circle. Like she has such a tight circle. Sometimes I don't even know if I'm in the circle, but like it's a really, really, really close circle. But yeah, so you've got to have your circle, you got to have your tribe, you got to have your power base. You got to write your goals down every day. I didn't do it. I was like, I'll just type it in. No, you got to write it down every day. Write down your plan. Like,
so
many things.
If you were to leave our listeners with maybe a piece of encouragement, or just kind of a last thought that you want to leave them with, what would that be?
I mean, if an Indiana farm boy can do it, like, for crying out loud, I would say the encouragement is, I mean, a decade ago, Andrea, just 10 years, right? I mean, I was an alcoholic, addictive sports gambler, and 300 pounds and $500,000 in debt, and a net worth of negative 145, living in a 1,000 square foot apartment. And today we have a $500,000 business, living in a $1 million house in Las Vegas. And I've been sober for 10 years, and I have the greatest friends on the planet. Like, I didn't do anything special other than I just did the work every day.
Yeah.
I didn't do the work every day, all day. I did the work every day. And I identified a few things that I had to do to win the day. And once that was done, I just did life. But the compound effect works. It works every time. And you're seeing it, especially if you're in my inner circle, you've seen it. And for someone like yourself, who's, we've known each other for 8-9 months and don't talk a lot, you're seeing it being like, just different. I'm a different person than I was 9 months ago.
Yeah.
And the primary reason I'm a different person 9 months ago from when you saw me is because I was in tremendous pain then, and I'm not now.
Yeah.
And that pain, right? That physical pain that people have, they carry it in so many different places, and that just can affect them. So, like, it's just, the simple books, right? I mean, just the easy ones. The One Thing, The Compound Effect, Win the Day. I mean, just those 3 books, if you just read them over and over and over and over and over and just did it, like, you've got High Performance Habits. That's a really big, hard book to read. Like, it's so big.
Yeah.
But I mean, you read that, read The Total Money Makeover. Like,
I'm pretty sure the Compound Effect, I might have every other line highlighted.
Yeah. Like, every time I want to read it, I put the book that I have in the closet, and I just get a fresh new one. So yeah.
What is your, tell us your website, because you have a course, right? Or not a course, but the event that you're putting on. Yeah.
So I have an ebook, which is it's the number 5 financialmistakes.com. The number 5 financialmistakes.com. That's where you can download
in the description down below, so people can click on it as well.
And then my event site, financialfitcoaching.com. financialfitcoaching.com/event. financialfitcoaching.com/event. That'll send you to the wait list, and then you'll be notified when the next event's launched.
Okay. Okay.
Which should be in the next 2 weeks.
It's coming up. It's coming up soon.
It is going to be the end of September and here in Las Vegas. So
that is awesome.
Yeah. And Las Vegas in September is about 90 degrees. You will not see a cloud, and it is still some swimsuit season. So
it is very hot. So people will definitely, when and if they have downtime afterwards, then they can definitely go enjoy that.
Plenty of time of that at my events.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, we don't need to be inside when we talk about net worth and budgeting.
Why not be in the sun and,
That's right.
and happy camper? Matt, thank you so much for coming on. I'm so stoked to have people hear your story, and just I think there's so many nuggets and so many tools in what you shared. And what's fascinating to me is, like, a lot of times when I talk to people, they have one of the things that you mentioned, not all of the things that you mentioned. And so this is, to me, just hearing you make it through that journey is encouragement alone, right? Hearing you make that battle, the decisions, the right turn, right turn, right turn, right turn. That is going to be my new hashtag, I'm pretty sure, right? There's just some beautiful nuggets in this. And I cannot thank you enough for coming on the show. I really appreciate the time, letting me in your circle for just a moment today. Is just, it's an honor. So.
Well, we can work on that. We run in close enough circles that we can definitely make that happen.
Yeah, I love it. 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 Thank you so much, Matt.
All right, you're welcome.